Hey guys, this is John, and I'm playing Pearly in the 15-minute pool on ICC. Pearly is 1660 and opens with e4. Hmm. Let's play a Sicilian in this one. Maybe we can get like a slightly more mainstream line. I'm gonna play d6 against their knight c3. So this is a move consistent with what like a Najdorf player or maybe a Dragon player might play. They play g3 in reply. I'll just play knight c6. So this usually indicates that they're content to go into the closed Sicilian. I'll play g6 now. I tend to like this setup, putting the bishop on g7, and then playing e6 and knight ge7 is usually my preferred way of handling this line. I like it because you have several pieces aimed at the tender f5 square. So you discourage white from pushing f5, which is a common plan because they want to expand on the king side. Case in point, g4, expanding on the king side. So this move, my immediate instinct is to meet it with f5 because that's what you usually do when they play this move. I have a book by this grandmaster, Valery Brozhnik, I think is his name, and it's all on positional themes in chess. And it says that a move like f5 is called hitting the junction, is what he names this idea. And you put a stop to f5 by putting a pawn there yourself. Just deciding if I want to play it or if I want to play for something on the queen side. Like typical would be rook b8 and b5, b4 in order to introduce play on the queen side. That's the best way to do it. It's better to play rook b8 than a6 because rook b8 gets out of the long diagonal, out of the gaze of white's light square bishop as well. But I think I'll play f5 because this is a good way to shut down their play with f5 as well. He immediately plays h3 in reply. I'm surprised by that move. It's more of a maintenance move rather than trying for an attack necessarily. I don't really want to take on g4 or e4 because there's no reason to. So I'll probably just continue with my own play. Rook b8, get ready for b5. e6 is a little bit weak, but as long as our bishop stays here, there's nothing white can do to exploit it. So yeah, let's play rook b8. If they go a4 in a bid to stop b5, then I'll play a6. It's best to do it in that order. Rook b8 first, then a6. So I had to wait a little while for a game. It's about 10 o'clock at night here in Minnesota. And Pearly, wow, this guy has played more 15-minute games than anyone I've seen so far. Almost 20,000 15-minute games. Peak rating of 1843. Knight e2, so they're trying to transfer the knight to g3. That's pretty clear. So what is the effect of the knight coming to g3? They add one more attacker to f5, but I have it well defended, so I'm not really sure that I care too much. Yeah, let's just continue as planned, b5. And they play c3. In a sense, this move gives me a hook to attack with by playing b4 now. It makes sense like why they would want to play that move, because now they can play bishop e3 without fear of losing their b2 pawn. But at the same time, I think it'd be desirable for them to keep that pawn back, because now it gives me something to latch onto when I want to play b4, which I can play right now. I can also play a5 first if I want, but let's play b4. I bet they're going to play bishop e3. Notice now they can't play knight g3 because I take on c3 twice. They play bishop d2 instead. I'm going to play a5. My plan now, I might put the bishop on a6. This leaves e7 hanging, but I can cover that with my queen if I need to. Like if they get frisky with knight g5, queen d7 takes care of that. Maybe I'd have to watch out for queen to b3, but it seems like a pretty superficial attack. I guess even there I have knight d8 if absolutely necessary. So this should be okay. Queen c2. Maybe they're looking to play c4, now that the queen is defending b2. I still like bishop a6. I could also insert an exchange on c3 if I want. But I feel like that might just lead to simplifications down the file. So if bishop a6, c4, where's my play coming from? If I take on e4, they take. c4 is a little bit weak, but nothing special. Maybe I should take on c3 and then have a file to work with. Would have a file in the attack. If I take on c3, I think the focus of the game will shift over towards the queen side a little bit, which I'm okay with. Yeah, you know what? Let's do that. Let's open the b file. They could take with a bishop, but somehow I think they're going to take with a pawn. If bishop takes, I'll just play bishop a6 anyways. No big deal. I'll be curious to see what the engine thinks after the game, whether taking is good or not. Okay, he does take with the bishop. So bishop a6, take on g7, king takes, let's say knight g5, queen d7, queen c3 check. I'm just playing like the most aggressive moves I can think of for white. King back to g8. I still don't see much danger. I still think I have everything covered. I could take on c3 myself, but what's the point? Yeah, let's go bishop a6. I also had knight b4. I mean, I still have knight b4. I can still consider that. But pressurizing d3 and completing our development looks good enough. So again, if take on g7, king takes, queen c3, king g8, I can always cover this. It might even make sense for me very soon to play just queen d7, possibly even on this move. As not over, I was about to say overprotection. It's not really overprotection. I don't defend e6 at all anymore, so just protecting e6. What about knight b4? Knight b4, trying to force them to part with the dark square bishop. I kind of like that move. And it hits d3, so knight b4, they'd have to play queen b1, which is rather passive. Yeah, let's do it. They can play queen b3 because it does attack e6, but again, queen d7 would be a simple solution. Maybe now I take on c3. Or just queen d7. Ah, I can take on e4. That's what I can do. Aha. I knew there was something missing in this position. Okay, so now that the queen is not on c2, it's no longer defending the knight on e2. So if I take on e4, I'm just winning a pawn, I think. Well, actually, I don't know. Maybe knight g5. Because the point would be that if I take, they can't take with this pawn because of bishop takes e2. So let's say f takes e4, knight g5. Bishop takes d3 maybe. Rook takes, pawn takes, knight takes e6. I suspect that has to be good for us. I'm not going to time down any further. Just going to make a decision. I'm really finding in these 15-minute games that you kind of just at some point have to cut off your calculations. Like normally in a tournament game, I might take longer just to verify that knight g5, bishop takes d3 is indeed good for black. But here, like my instincts say it's good. I don't see any great danger even if they play knight g5. So it's probably not worth the extra time it would take to fully convince myself. Like I'm already like 90, 95% convinced. I don't think it's worth like another minute and a half, 2 minutes to fully convince myself. Okay, so bishop takes here. What if I insert a capture on f3? Presumably they take on f8. I take on e2. And I'm hitting both rooks. That's disastrous for white. Yeah, I don't think they can do this. I could simply take back, but if I take back, then knight g5 gains in strength because it'd be threatening a triple fork. Yeah, so this is good. After bishop takes f8, take on e2. If they could successfully play bishop takes e7, and I wasn't able to take the rooks for some reason, then they might be able to come out of this unscathed, but there's too much stuff hanging for them. They're going to have 3 pieces hanging after bishop takes f8, and I take on e2. So I'm getting my material back with interest. Yeah, he just decided to take. And now when I recapture, I'm just up a piece. Yeah, full piece, not even a pawn for it for white. Okay, so now we go about trying to win a 1 position. I think knight to d5 makes sense. I could take on d3, just play to swap, but when you're ahead like this, I'm ahead a full piece. I don't want to create any further imbalance if I can avoid it. Like if I take on d3 and he takes, bishop takes, queen takes, that's an imbalance that white can point to and say, well, maybe I can generate something from this. But when I play a move like this, it's just total shutdown mode. I'm up a piece. I'm not giving them any anything they can point to and say that my position is different from yours, possibly in a way that gives me chances. Okay, so he covers e3. Probably queen b6 is good now. Attacking b2. If rook d2, maybe c4 check. Otherwise, b2 is hard to guard. It's nice that this knight guards c3, so no trouble there. They could try some desperation move like f5, trying to open up my king, but it's not going to work out. Yeah, rook d2, so I can maybe even play bishop takes d3. Bishop takes d3, rook takes d3, c4 check. Rook d4, e5. That's a strong line. There's also knight e3 or just knight takes f4. Maybe just knight takes f4 is good. It also wins a pawn. Yeah, we're not going to mess around. Just bank the pawn. Let's pre-move this. They could also check on c3, but I have e5. The queen is on the same diagonal as my rook, but this rook doesn't have anywhere devastating it can go as a discovery. So king up. Now I'm thinking rook takes f3 ideas are going to be present soon. I could do it right away, but then king takes. Again, no imbalance is necessary. Let's just double. So now I'm threatening to take, because after rook takes, I can play bishop back to b7, and it's death on the long diagonal for them.
Check.
E5 is planned. Yeah, now we can take successfully. Rook takes f3, rook takes f3, bishop b7. And we're just looking at further simplifications. King g3, I can swap everything on f3. I'm up a piece, plus a pawn now. A good way to play out winning positions, by the way, and like practice your technique, is to play against an engine. Most of these modern engines are strong enough that you can just play against like Stockfish on full capacity while you're like up a rook or something, and it'll put up perfect defense practically, and see if you can beat it. You can adjust whatever material you want based on your level. So queen c4, I could take on b2 with check, but I think I'm going to keep it simple and just take on f3 with my rook. So we'll do that. Actually, rook takes f3, rook takes f3. If I go queen c6, then they have queen f7. Maybe I should just play queen c6 first. That way there's no queen f7 move to even worry about. Yeah, this is better versus taking on f3 to begin with. So we ratchet up the pressure on f3. He's still pinned. Nothing white can do. Queen e4 is probably the best move, but then we take, pawn takes, bishop takes. It's over. All their material is gone. So let's take as planned. We can pre-move this recapture. King moves, we can just take.
Check.
Pre-move that recapture. Yeah, d5. Keep the king out of e4. And he resigns. Okay, so let's go back and have a look. Nice to get in a anti-Sicilian. So the Closed Sicilian, it's always been a somewhat popular weapon, mainly at class level. You don't see it at GM level that often. Although former world champion Boris Spassky, probably the biggest proponent of the Closed Sicilian. So d6. Depending upon which Sicilian line you play, you just have to be careful like what you do here. For instance, I remember when I was kind of inexperienced in the Sicilian, and I mainly played the Najdorf, and I played knight c6 against this move one time against a GM. And to my surprise, they played knight f3. And suddenly I realized, well, white still might go d4. And if I play like a standard Sicilian move like d6, I'm no longer in a Najdorf anymore. I think I did something like I started playing a dragon or something like that. I can't remember exactly what I did. I might have even played g6 here. But I was thoroughly confused and I went down in flames. So knight c3 on move 2, you want to tailor it to whichever open line of the Sicilian you defend with, because they could still transpose back to that with knight f3 and d4. So in this game, I played d6 because I wanted to go into a Najdorf. And that's consistent. If they play knight f3, I can play knight f6. And if d4 comes, we're going to transpose into a Najdorf. I think you've also seen me on this channel play a6 because I like to play the con Sicilian. So that keeps open the option. If they go knight here, I can play, for instance, e6, d4, take, take. We're in a con Sicilian. So d6, and he played g3. Knight c6, bishop g2. And I like this setup. It's a good rule of thumb against most anti-Sicilians, if you're black, to try to play for control of d4. If white has shown that they're not going to play d4 and enter the open Sicilian, it makes sense for you to try to control that square yourself. So hence the popularity of kingside fianchetto setups, just almost mimicking what white's doing. And a lot of people play knight f6 against these setups, but I feel like when they're playing f4, it makes a lot of sense to put the pawns on g6, e6, and then develop this knight through e7. And at that point, you have 1, 2, 3, 4 defenders of f5. It's very hard for them to get this move in because white wants to attack you on the king side in this setup most of the time. Sometimes they end up playing in the center, but their dream would be to like play f5, like rip open your king side and checkmate you. So the more roadblocks you can throw at that, the better. So castle, castle. I believe the main move is bishop e3 here, but they played g4. And here's where I employed this hitting the junction idea, f5. Let's just turn on the engine. Because I don't want to give him the option of playing f5, even if it's still not good for him. I'd rather control the pawn breaks myself. I like this. I mean, then I have the option of taking, and if he were to take, I would probably take with my e-pawn. So let's say they take with the g-pawn. I would take with my e-pawn, actually, to keep the g-file closed. I also might gain the e6 square from my bishop. I've seen a couple games where black is successful in doing that. I suspect g-pawn might be okay, but it leaves my king side a little bit open. I'd rather not do that if I could avoid it. So in these structures, I think it is better to take with the e-pawn. In fact, I remember in that book that I was mentioning by Brozhnik, and I'll try to link that book if I can in the description. There are some games, I think there's a Walter Brown game he showed that was very nice where black took with the e-pawn in exactly this scenario. Pearly plays h3. This seems kind of like a half measure to me. I don't know that you want to be advancing the g-pawn and then immediately have to defend it with h3. Like, you've gained a little bit of space, but it costs time and it creates some weaknesses too. So now I went about standard play in the closed Sicilian. Rook b8, getting ready for b5. Like I said, if you have a choice, it's better to play rook b8 and b5, b4, just to get out of the long diagonal. You could go a6, but oh, and there's another reason why a6 might be inferior. It's like you saw in the game, black often wants to be able to play a5 after playing b5. So a6 might turn out to be like a waste of a move because, yeah, you help b5, but do you really want the pawn on a6 long term when you're storming on the queen side? Not really. So rook b8, knight e2. I thought they were going to go to g3 with that move, so I just played b5. If they had gone to g3, I wouldn't have reacted. I would have just kept pushing. And again, if they take, here it's even more important that I can take with the e-pawn. Because if I take with the g-pawn, that gives them access to h5 with the knight. So it's much nicer to be able to take here, keep this g6 pawn for support, defending h5 and f5. He played c3, and like I said, I have mixed feelings about that move because it gives me a nice hook to attack with after b4. And then bishop d2. I played a5. Interestingly, the computer likes c4, not a move I considered. Probably because it's unusual. By putting the bishop on d2, they've temporarily lost coordination with their d3 pawn, communication with that pawn. So c4 is a bid to take advantage of that. If takes, I assume take on e4 is the idea. So we've knocked out that support. And the resulting structure looks good for black. Like if here is d5 going to be the move, you know, I'd say take, something like this looks pretty good for black. Yeah, unusual move, but I can see the value of it. Attacking the weak points in white's position. Because right now it's structure warfare. The minor pieces will have their say, but we're making a lot of pawn moves, as you can tell. You know, over the past like 5 moves, he's made 1, 2, 3 pawn moves. I've also made 3, and I think I made a 4th right here. So we're both trying to stake out as much territory as possible because he's somewhat pushing on the king side, and I want to be able to counter on the queen side. That's where the majority of my play is going to come from. But a5 is such a standard move. I don't think it's like a mistake or anything. It just, there might be stronger moves like c4. I also saw that Engine was liking bishop a6. I'd rather play bishop a6 after the pawn gets to a5. It's just much nicer to have the bishop behind the pawn. So take on c3. Again, the computer doesn't like that necessarily. It says take and then bishop a6, hitting that knight on e2. What if they just defend it? Queen b6 or b takes c3. Okay. Yeah, seems somewhat similar to the game. I took c3. They took the bishop. Bishop a6. I thought they might take on g7. And I was looking at some aggressive stuff like knight g5, because this is a weak point in our camp. We have to bear that in mind. But queen d7 always covers it nicely, I think. And it's crucial that they can't like immediately get another attacker on the e6 pawn. So we've got that square covered by the bishop and also the rook on b8. So I was okay with the exchange on g7 if that had happened. This move might be a mistake in view of knight b4. Because they really would not want to part with the dark square bishop. You can see the eval is already huge for black in that case. I've got 2 great bishops attacking weak points, and my rook is working in the position. This is very nice for me. So after knight b4, they played queen a2. Yep, and I found the capture on e4. I didn't actually see that when I played knight b4, but once the queen came back to b1, I did notice that was possible. Yeah, and this looks like it's enough to win on its own. The position's already minus 4.5, which is pretty huge for a position where you've only just won a pawn. But that's not just because I won a pawn, it's because of the build-up to that. White's on the defensive, black has already made a lot of strides on the queen side, I've got these bishops. So even if they play like a good move like this, I was looking mainly at bishop takes, which also seems good. Yeah, if they take here, I take with the pawn. They take e6, I can play queen c8. I briefly looked at a line like this where they take here or here, and then take on e2. And I'm coming out ahead in material again. So they took g7, but unfortunately for them, this doesn't work either because of this in-between move, this Zwischenzug. So take on f3, and yeah, if he were to continue the chain reaction, bishop takes f8, I mentioned this line, and white now has 3 pieces hanging. For the moment, like exactly this move, they're up the exchange. They have 1 point extra material. I have a minor piece and a pawn against their rook, but they can't save all those pieces. In fact, they can't even save a rook. They're going to be going down a rook. So I'll be up a piece clear. So hence he just took back, but after king takes, it's just a matter of time now. Up a piece with no compensation for white. And like I said, I think it's important to keep in mind that you want to minimize imbalances if you're the side up the piece here. Like I could take on d3. It's not going to affect the evaluation too much. It's not the best move according to the engine, but I'm still -5. But why even do that? Now he can say like, oh, I have a bishop. Maybe I can cause you problems on the light squares. You know? Whereas if I just play my knight back to d5, I'm attacking e3, f4. I'm just up a straight piece. No imbalances. Boring chess is good chess when you're ahead in material. Yep, and then f4 falls. We double up.
Check.
Block the check. And we introduce this capture on f3 idea. And just avoid anything bad, like queen c6 I think is a good move. I could also take on f3 first, but I noticed like then queen f7 is an issue. Again, it's not enough to at all shape the evaluation of the position. It's totally winning for black still. I can just take if I want even. But play it safe, queen c6. Trade the queens, take
Check.
everything on f3, be up a knight and 2 pawns in the endgame. Forced resignation. Okay, so I feel like this game showed some fundamental aspects of the closed Sicilian, especially from black's point of view. The importance of the f5 move. Also this Fischer setup with the knights protecting each other and the fianchetto dark square bishop controlling d4. Also preparing queenside play because that's where black wants to aim to play. And you do that with rook b8, b5, b4. Try to push your a pawn up the board too and avoid a6. Rook b8 is better. So thank you guys for watching. I'll be back tomorrow with another standard game. Talk to you guys later. Bye.